Hello, everybody. In this interview, I interview founder and CEO of DeepMetis, Ferdinand Biere. He's running a deep tech venture studio in the heart of Berlin. He's a pioneer in artificial intelligence and a thought leader in the field. He's also a friend of mine. In this conversation, we talk about everything from his journey of becoming, how he became a pioneer, and how he developed hundreds of prototypes for customers from all around the world that are all very memorable in this space. In this conversation, you will learn how to think like an engineer, how to think like a venture capitalist, and how to endure the tough times of being a founder while you're in the midst of doing something great. So enjoy this episode. Thank you for watching. This podcast is sponsored by NeoVPN. You can go to neovpn.online to get the best VPN in the world. It's founded by a friend of mine who I respect deeply. He was a true revolutionary. A couple of years ago, humanity built a brain outside of the body. And certain governments do not allow my platforms, the new platform that I'm building, and even this podcast to be listened by guys like you. We don't think this is cool. We don't think that certain governments should have control over what kind of information we consume. So go to this website, neovpn.online, in order to make sure that these guys don't control what you're thinking. Ferdinand, it's nice to have you on the podcast. Huh?
It's my very pleasure, Daniel.
The pleasure is on my side, and now we know each other for actually quite a while. And for people who don't know Ferdinand Biere, he's a tech-based entrepreneur from Berlin, and he is who I describe as a one-person incubator. He has developed countless prototypes for some of the biggest clients in the world, and is a pioneer in the intersection between AI, deep technology, and modern digitalization. And he's been a friend, advisor, and mentor. The last thing I'm not sure I can really mean in regards all things technology in a way. And he's a high character man, and I'm looking forward in this interview to learn more about how this person was created, in what lab they cooked you up, and what some core stories are that had an impact on you. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for the kind words, and really looking forward to talking to you today.
Thank you so much. Where did it all begin? When you think about like your journey as a founder, like what was one of the first indicators that maybe a bit different?
So, I come from a rather entrepreneurially minded family. My first touch point actually was when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I saw, I don't know if anybody in your audience knows about it, My Muesli. They were like a dropshipping company for customizable cereals. And I thought, hey, why don't do that for spices? So that's kind of where it started. It never got anywhere, obviously, because I was 12 years old and didn't know what I was doing. And but it was the first touch point and what kind of started fascinating me about that kind of work.
It's very interesting. We had yesterday night where until 1 o'clock in the morning, almost in a way, where you counted the hours and you said, when is he stopped talking in a way? As you probably always do, but in your infinite politeness, never confess to me in a way. And you always give me the feeling that what I'm saying is interesting, even though probably
it usually is.
Yeah, probably look like a talking monkey to someone with your intellect. But I found that fascinating. There's something to you where it's often a separation between the creative people and those who have a deep understanding of the market. And I feel like you are both an inventor and a venture capitalist at the same time. And I feel one of your earliest ventures reveals that you are both able to think like a disruptor, but at the same time still have the economic variables in the back of your mind. Who taught you about business?
I learned a lot about it from my dad, who's been self-employed for many decades, worked in finance, worked in technology, and the intersection between the two of those. And from my mom, who's an accountant, so it kind of comes to me rather naturally to think in these kinds of systems.
Interesting, yeah. I had the honor of meeting this fine gentleman as well, an accountant, and on the other side, an engineer. Very interesting. That makes sense. What do you feel is the biggest lesson you learned from your dad?
So if I would have, he and I have a running joke. Let me expand on this a bit. Basically, when somebody asks you to be a managing director, just to say plainly no. because it's just a huge amount of risk you're taking on, legally speaking. And it's like this understanding for legal systems and how to be fluent in this kind of bureaucracy. I would say that's the main thing I've learned, to be able to, when I want to know if I'm able to do something, I can just look it up online, read a law, and probably understand like 80% of it. Obviously, it doesn't substitute legal advice, but you can get quite far to just understand the rules of the game in the system you're playing.
Very interesting. For people who don't know our dynamics, we came in touch in a closer relationship a little bit earlier when I tried to build the company that I'm working on right now. And one of the things that I always appreciate about you is that you have this vibe where you encourage people around you to just try and learn it up in a way. And I feel like the great teachers, they don't do stuff for you. They help you to learn how to do these things, no matter how often you ask them. In a way, they teach you how to do them yourself. And one of the things I like is you have so many skills in different areas that are completely unconnected. In a way, who gave you permission to be interested in so many things and actually learn about them? You were, for instance, one of the first persons who I played Dungeons and Dragons with. And there was just this small thing, and you were the dungeon master, and there was with Lisa, we created this whole world, and I never experienced something like this. And I like how there is an ability for world building and an ability to learn stuff that from an outside view doesn't really make sense on being connected to, but strangely it is in a way. So how did you learn about, or how do you think this spirit of exploration and curiosity was created?
I think that was actually always there to a sense. So if you asked me in primary school what I wanted to do, my first wish for a job was actually be a Nobel laureate. So I'd go into science, and
interesting.
So this spark of curiosity was kind of always there, but for this interconnectedness, and I mean I do consider myself a generalist, for this interconnectedness that kind of started, I'd say, when I was in high school, and it were my first touch points with machine learning, right? So neural networks, and at the same time I was learning in biology about the brain and that kind of stuff, just seeing how there is lessons that you can take from biology and apply to technology, and just kind of made sense. And nowadays I'm a firm believer that there's many fundamental truths in a lot of fields that are trivial to people within those fields, but are groundbreaking to people in other fields. So living in this intersection between fields kind of gives you an edge in that sense.
Yeah, it's interesting that one of the things that I'm learning right now from you is I'm operating in the intersection between leadership, technology, and psychology, and there's some things where I'm from, you're intimidated by doing so much of tasks yourself in a way. And I don't consider myself a technical founder, for instance. I always needed people who helped me with that. But you showed me some of those things and completely demystified them to the degree where it was always, this is this easy? And it's like, this is what I was afraid of in a way. And one of the things I'm curious about is, how did you infuse the sense of play into exploration in a way? Because I think one of the things that's cool about you, where that plays into you being a venture capitalist is too, you play, but you're not always so invested that you don't allow yourself to test things in a way. And for me, I'm always like, this has to work. And it always creates this prison of not being able to pivot according with the vision, and sometimes die because this has to be like I imagine rather than what the market demands of it in a way. Nobel laureate in preschool. So there was a sense of accomplishment early on in a way, wanting to be the best.
Yes.
Interesting. Tell me.
Some ambition in that regard.
How do you come with that creative?
I mean, I honestly don't know. It kind of was always there. Maybe from I mean, now we kind of touch the nature versus nurture debate, right? Is there a genetic component to it? Is there an educational component to it? Was there some events in my childhood that led me down this path? I can't answer that, but it kind of was always there.
You would try to answer that. How would you answer? Because one of the things I'm interested about is the whole premise of my current venture is to connect great leaders of the past with scholars and seekers of the present in a way. And one of the things that I'm deeply interested in is how are geniuses created? How are people of extraordinary accomplishments, extraordinary contribution created in a way? So one of the things that, for instance, did you have a Nexus event or something like this in a way where it's like Batman, where something tragic happens and now he needs to save Gotham, and he's stuck in this permanent coping mode to make sense of his life.
So, I mean, I kind of had a hard time connecting with peers in elementary school, and it's pretty much the same time my dad brought home from his work an old decommissioned computer. So in primary school, I had my first computer in my room, which I could just use and tinker around with. I still have the book somewhere in the shelf behind us, which my dad gave me somewhere like grade 2 on PowerPoint, like grade 3 actually it was on PowerPoint and PowerPoint animations, and I played around with that. Those were like my first touch points with digital technology. And I mean, you could probably call my digital creativity at that point a coping mechanism to some degree, to fill my day, to have something to do, to have a productive outlet. And shortly after, I started programming.
What do you feel this early childhood specialization in engineering has taught you about life?
I mean, I remember a very particular instance in my childhood where a peer told me, like, basically, I suggested, hey, let's build this little video game idea we had. I was like, no, you can't do that. You're a kid. If you want to be creative, you can build something with wood maybe, but you can't do that. I was like, just plainly no, I can't do that if I want to. Like, the interesting part about it is it's a system you control. There's no unknown variables, right? Yeah, for the most part. And if you say do A, it does A. And if you tell it to do something weird, and there's a bug, you were the one to cause that. So you're in full control within your little confined space. And that gives a certain degree of power if you can always seek refuge in a space you control, and you understand where is the boundary of my ability, where's the boundary of what I can influence.
I once met a millionaire in Bali. I had this beautiful place where I was drinking coffee and ate 10 eggs every day. It was very cheap. In Germany, it's like 1 egg, like a fortune costed, and if you get it in a restaurant here, particularly for a founder, where every egg counts probably to get the protein. And I asked that guy, like, what was the biggest lesson he learned that helped him to raise a fortune, and he was interestingly said, unlearning what my father taught me. And he had this resentful father who always hated him because he was doing so much better than him. And I like the idea of how accomplishments are also well connected to unlearning certain belief systems that are inhibiting us moving forward. And one of the things that I find fascinating about the technology sphere is you rarely hear somebody tell you this is not possible. Sometimes maybe you don't have the money to build the thing like that you want to build, but they never say no. And I like this. How do you feel you were made into a person who wouldn't be crippled by what other people would expect of them?
I mean, I feel like being part of a tribe, being liked by your tribe is a very human thing. So not thinking at all about...
What does it feel like to be liked? I've never... Tell me more. No. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. We watched Matrix yesterday, and one of the things I liked about this movie was where it's basically a journey of somebody believing into someone else, and that person, that scholar, by the end believing in himself too, and then being able to do the impossible. When you think of the word mentor, what's the person that comes to mind for yourself?
I mean, multiple people. To some degree, obviously my parents, from what I've already mentioned. I've had teachers who really pushed me. For instance, my computer science teacher, who let me join in, basically silently sit in classes from fifth grade on, which usually wasn't like the way it should go, but they let me do it and me participate in European projects and sent me off to like certain educational seminars and whatnot.
It's fine. We're here in a hustle. That's maybe like a good segue in a way. One of the things that I like very much about you in regards to is the environment you seem to constantly be carving around you in a way. And it's like for people who have never visited you, we're in a hustle villa. I love this term. I feel like for me personally, I was always looking for an environment like Silicon Valley, but the fantasy of it. I want to be with
like in a TV show.
Yes. And it seems you built something like that in a way. It was like a Silicon Valley and the heart of Berlin in a way. And it's like, how did you learn, or what's the story behind the hustle villa? How did that came about?
So first,
because I was explaining this because like there's another hacker here, so to say, and programmer who sneezed. Whatever, you're gonna get it. Yeah, but that's like why I was doing the segue. So if there's some noises, it's completely fine. People walking in actually.
So first of all, we started using the term hustle villa jokingly, and we don't mean it seriously because this hustle culture has some aspects of it which we don't agree with. Just to make that clear. But
shout out to you, media trainer. I see you've been conditioned well.
But talking about the environment we've created, started organically with my co-founder and buddy Maurits and I. When we started, basically we moved in together at the same time we started the company, and it kind of evolved from there. Now, like about a year ago, we moved to a bigger space where there's now people working here full time all the time. And we have guests over quite often from the ecosystem. And I mean, honestly, it was you who really pointed out to me that this place and this culture here is something that's not, I don't want to say extraordinary, but extraordinary in the original meaning of the word, meaning out of the ordinary. Something that you don't find in every co-working space. Because I personally don't enjoy working in co-working spaces that much. Because I feel like it's loud, it's unpersonable, and you have just a lot of people, but there's like this vibe missing for me. And I personally don't like commuting, so that's why I started working from home. And now I have the best of both worlds because I live here, and there's awesome people coming here to work with me, and it's an office culture, but I don't have to leave the house, which means I need to go on walks to get my steps in. That's a trade-off I'm willing to take.
Yeah, but no, this is I completely when I envisioned like what I ideally would have hoped to find in San Francisco, when outside of funding too, of course, that would be nice. Somebody listening, I am open to calls. Is this idea of having an environment where everything is possible and where other visionaries work on important things, and it's. One of the beautiful things about startups or young companies, I feel, is that they are able to create an environment that has a soul rather than a corporate kind of structure where nobody even notices if you are there or if you're gone. And for me, when I first started to visit you here and sometimes even work to you, it reminded me of what you said about some of your teachers allowing you to sit in the class. Anyway, even though like sometimes I've mastered many things skill wise. Will never master, but in regards to something, I felt like a scholar, which is like a really cool thing, and that's like something that I feel every young entrepreneur needs is an environment where they can learn the particular discipline they are engaging in a way. Do you feel Berlin has some of those vibes?
So, I mean, in terms of economic possibility, Berlin is very well equipped. Does it have this like vibe? Yes, but the question is how you actually want to look at it. If you ask me, there's two facets to it. You have the like this high energy young company, everything is possible, let's go to the moon, and then you have the more nuanced, more burnt out crowd of people who've done it before and failed before and failed before and failed before and failed before and now are working on the next thing.
Yeah.
And those are the two kind of groups that mingle here in the ecosystem.
One of the things I'm interested in is you started this company with your co-founder. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges many non-technical founders like me have is how do you find a good technical co-founder? I think you have a tremendous talent for attracting AI players. If you would give a masterclass or on how to find a technical co-founder, what would the first topic of that be?
I mean, to attract top tier technical talent, you must be willing to accommodate the quirks that come with it. Shout out to you, Maurus. In all seriousness, I mean, if you have a certain image of how a co-founder needs to look, I don't know, like a Stanford degree, ex-Google, or whatnot. Obviously, there's a pool of highly qualified people you can find like that. But if you stop limiting yourself to this crowd and look for highly skilled people that share your values, that wanna work on stuff you wanna work on, I feel like it's easier to attract a type of talent. And if you see them as a person and you as a person, and there's a foundation of trust, then you can build atop that and do good work. And on the other hand, when it now comes to technical advice on how to screen them, because I mean, as a non-technical person, it's hard to actually screen technical stuff, as you probably painfully remember.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never lost anything because of making the wrong personal choice. No, but you're right. And I think one of the things that people sometimes forget is everybody wants to have the genius in their sphere, but nobody wants to be in a relationship with them in a way. And it's like when you have superpowers, they usually come along with super weaknesses from my point of view too. And you mentioned earlier that for you, it was hard to connect in the first chapter of your life. Mm-hmm. And one of the consequences of being extraordinarily talented in something is that you're different. And when you're different, you're experiencing the full force of not being part of the group.
Yeah.
And that makes people strange. And I think sometimes they forget that 10 years of being outside of the confines of the city makes you into a little bit of a madman or woman at times.
Indeed.
How do you deal with the divas, the superstars of business in a way? I feel that you have learned a lot about that in your life.
So, just treating people as people as the first aspect, because I mean, there are people first, and business persons and celebrities and whatnot, superstars second, and I mean they don't usually come to me without a certain goal or a certain problem that needs to be solved. If you just focus on that and see them as actual people, and let your professionalism take over, it usually works out well.
Interesting. What is something you now know about entrepreneurship to be true, to be false, that you thought to be true early on in your career?
So that's actually quite a lot of things. Initially, I was a bit overcome by pride of the engineer. You know, at TU Berlin, you know, the dropout rates of computer science are only surpassed by like 2 or 3 other fields. So you feel there's a certain amount of elitism in engineers, at least in my peer group at the time. And overcoming that and seeing, yes, sales and marketing do have the right to be in existence. It's not some stupid made up stuff. And also for probably the first 2.5 years at least of my entrepreneurial journey, like my actual what I count. So basically, after my studies at TU, I would consider that what the word business actually means. I mean, it was always like, ooh, we need somebody to do business. We do technology. Somebody needs to do business. What does it actually mean? It's just a bunch of processes that can be measured, that can be improved. It's skills that need to be learned or can be learned. And this understanding that it demystified a lot of things for me.
For me too. And it was during my earliest ventures, I wish I had somebody like you at my side who would just name all the fucking processes that you need to actually exercise in order for the car to work. And it's like one of my earliest startups. I remember that I misjudged the constraints of the company, and I was not doing the thing that would have gotten the car to move. And I meet so many people who don't have a clear understanding of what the car of business is and how to get it to move in a way.
One thing I actually find very interesting conversing with you is that you and I have had like pretty much polar opposite journeys in terms of which skills we acquired.
This is another thing. You don't acquire, if somebody's listening, you usually don't acquire the skills you need to succeed in entrepreneurship in the correct sequential order. And
is there a correct sequential order?
There's an incorrect order. It's like if I may complain for it, because for me, for instance, I was so good in all the stuff that involves people in regards to sales or in regards to leadership or having ideas, and I was tremendously bad in regards to operations, finance, in the idea of having a product and finding good product people in the beginning, so that the company wouldn't even mature to the point where I could shine. And sometimes I feel it's important that you ask yourself, is my current struggle a process or people problem that I'm having? And if you understand like, this is what I'm doing, then you also can hire or learn whatever you need to complete yourself. What is the message you have for founders who are starting their journey, where some little package, like a survival package that you can put into their backpack that will save them from some of the troubles that you went through?
So the first message would be, don't be a founder, it sucks. But if you know this and you still continue doing it, like I would consider myself, because it sucks. I think about quitting every day, but I still don't, because it's the best alternative, and secretly I do love it. I mean, I don't want to do anything else. So just being aware of the hardships that come across it. And I remember when I started out, people told me that. I read it in books, I saw it in podcasts, I didn't believe it. Now I know it.
They told you?
Yeah.
I thought I would be rich very fast.
What role has humor in your part of being an entrepreneur?
I mean, being an entrepreneur is hard. Hard things are difficult, and humor is a great coping mechanism for difficult situations. So a big part, I'd say.
Yeah. What's something where, when you think of the moment or the word test or challenge in regards to your journey as a founder, that comes to mind, and how did you cope with it?
I mean, there were a multitude of challenges, starting with first time building a front end and figuring stuff out for the first time, being like on having some issues with.
When you think of the word challenge, what's a story that comes to mind in regards to your journey as a founder or a man?
So, I mean, there were a multitude of challenges in my life, in my entrepreneurial life. Yeah, every time doing something new, the first time building a front end, the first time having to figure out taxes in Argentina, taxes in Chile, taxes in Vietnam, having to like deal with GDPR and making sure everything you do is compliant for the first time. It's scary, but I would say every time you face something like that and you just do it to the best of your ability, you usually get rewarded for it.
You grew up during an interesting time of the human race, I feel. And me too, actually. But you in particular, in a way, it's like the birth of AI, acceleration of technology. Give us your recollection of when technology started to speed up and how that was for you as somebody who can maybe see things a little bit earlier than others, and how does the current climate feel to you?
So I remember when we started out in 2020, nobody really cared about data science, about AI, about machine learning. Most people didn't know what it is. You mentioned earlier, we watched Matrix yesterday.
Yeah.
And they were like, AI, like in artificial intelligence, because the terminology was so novel. And now it has reached mass adoption, mass popularity, mass awareness, thanks to at the end ChatGPT. So prior to that, it was some people would call it the second AI winter. It was definitely more of a data analytics was prevalent. There were certain trends in the data world, but it wasn't in mainstream business consciousness. With ChatGPT, that changed, and now we see this growth in autonomy in those agents. If you like or dislike the term, I personally have mixed feelings about the word agent in the sense, because agent implies autonomy, and autonomy is not necessarily good with these kinds of systems yet, because they're not smart enough. You usually need a human in the loop, and that's kind of where the trend is going. I mean, we will have, I think there was this Accenture study that 80% of jobs will be changed in one way or another due to AI at some point within the next couple of decades, and so it's going to be interesting times. It's the right place to be right now, I'd say.
How do you deal with the speed? Because for me, one of the things that's been stressful for me is the fact that things are accelerating. There's every week is a new feature. Every week there's a new language model. Every week there's something new, this new tool that changes stuff in actually a significant way.
Is it actually new? Does it actually change stuff in a significant way? I would argue no. It's the big breakthroughs that led to these large language models have already happened. We do see a stagnation in performance to some degree. Now, this is a technical topic other people know significantly more about than I do, but as per my understanding, it's been stagnated a bit, and we now uncover what to do with this technology. But it's if we look at the Gartner hype cycle, we're obviously on the peak of over-exaggerated expectations. So I feel like it's more of a marketing hype cycle. In German, we would say the cow is still in the village. And once the cow leaves the village and we've actually accepted this technology as part of our tool stack, we will actually reach productivity in the long run.
Do you feel this is the beginning of creating artificial life?
I mean, the beginning of artificial life happened in the 40s. And again, to some degree in the 80s. And then again, to some degrees in the early 2000s. And it continues. I mean, everything builds on top of each other. Obviously, the speed of research did accelerate. We're more people now than ever before. So also more smart minds working in research. There is a certain degree of acceleration. But, I mean, just because more stuff is out there, obviously there will be more good stuff. There's also more bad stuff. And to weed through that, AI is an awesome tool.
We watched Matrix yesterday.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of science fiction. Many of my ideas I found in either the old text, like religious text, or in science fiction. It's just full with interesting ideas that had an interesting impact on society. What do you think this AI thing is going to turn into? Do you think the Matrix is right? And it's like we're going to have a big war, or what do you think is going to happen? Or do you think this is something that's so hard to predict because it's difficult to look that far into the future?
I mean, when I get asked questions like this, or some questions that kind of imply foresight, I always jokingly say my crystal ball is currently in a shop, on a dishwasher or something like that. And I mean, I can make predictions. I'm not sure if they're going to hold up. The certainty of my predictions is rather low. But if you put a gun against my head and tell me predict the future, then I'd say it will be like the last industrial revolution before that, whereas certain jobs were destroyed, most of jobs were changed, and some jobs were created. Obviously, the overall, if we look at society or the whole world as a system, the overall efficiency of the system increases. So we will eventually need less people and can use more tooling to automate stuff. That's one prediction. The second prediction is if we look at the steam engine. Before that, the pottery wheel, the mechanical loom. All of those inventions took more and more away from the manual labor into machinery. So we had a human agent and a tool. And the interesting part about this AI revolution now is that the tool and the operator kind of are fusing together. If you give ChatGPT a form and say, please analyze this form and generate a report out of it, it's no longer just the scanner that scans the document and then the ERP system that loads it into a specific format and the human clicking boxes and then processing happens. But this all fuses together into one system. But now I feel like what will become more and more important in the future will be quality assurance. That you have humans at the critical intersections of process workflows doing quality assurance to ensure we don't harm people. We don't all the obligations of the EU AI Act, basically.
I found an interesting YouTube video once. It was about the unpredictability of rabbits running away from a predator. It was about the fact that the rabbits themselves didn't know what direction they would go in order to escape the predator, so to say.
Are we the rabbits in that analogy?
One of the things I saw recently is that when I log into these social media platforms, LinkedIn, for instance, is that all stories that are created there are created by the same source of system in a way. And one of the things I wondered recently about it, if diversity actually is a evolutionary mechanism of survival, and where maybe we lose something that we needed to have in regards to having a million different perspectives on a million different behaving agents, rather than being directed by this hive mind almost in a way that tells everybody to some degree what to do in a way. What are your thoughts on that in regards to the dangers of giving our power to think independently and autonomously to a machine and all, grabbing inspiration from one artificial source?
I mean, I wouldn't, with all tools, with all technology, it should enable us to utilize our mental capacity more instead of stop thinking. The goal shouldn't be to just exist and not think anymore and let the machines think for us. But for instance, if you use the deep research mode, it allows you to pass significantly more data than you would be able to do if you were Googling and researching yourself. So it allows you to function on a higher level if you use the tools, right? And I think that's more where we should strive. Like I said, the human should be in control. The human should be the architect for the process, the architect for the solution space, for all the possible answers the machine should give, so that it can surprise you. We can't get dire consequences from actions of machines, and then we as humans are basically utilizing it as the tool it is.
If you would give some advice to people on how to survive through these times of rapid innovation, what is the right mindset so that we as adaptive creatures can deal with whatever is happening in a way? regardless if Terminators are coming, drones with lasers, or I don't know, self-replicating machines, smart dictatorships. What advice would you give someone in regards to stay level-headed and not be terrified what's ahead for us?
I would say, for me personally at least, it's a lot about accepting the fact that things are in constant change, accepting that a constant form of learning, a constant form of unlearning, relearning needs to happen to mentally being able to deal with those uncertain times. On the other hand, actually behind us here is a collection of books, of news articles from 1960 to 2000. And what I personally found very grounding is to look at those and see back then were also like people living their lives, trying their best in uncertain times, but in retrospective, it looks also clear. So like they say, hindsight is 20/20. So the change might be faster, the change might be different, but there was always change. There was never a time when there was no change, when there was no adaptability needed, and everything was certain. There was never certainty. Certainty is an illusion in that sense.
But there were men in control. And one of the things that when I had my last company, Chieftain, with Karim, who's a great visionary and has been one of the best storytellers in the world, we were worried a lot about that in the past, when there were international crises in a way, that in the end still it was men who protected men from men in a way. But now, with the rising of these rational systems in a way, they don't have a conscience. They just exist, and we take them. We almost give our ability to make choices by ourselves to this. There's wild studies that teenagers now use ChatGPT for almost every difficult life situation they have to consult it in a way. And to me, this is something that is interesting, but also terrifying at the same thing in a way. This is like if it's a lack of human autonomy in a way.
But couldn't you argue the same about search engines? That, now you don't need to go to the library anymore. You can search online. There's access to information. Now you don't need to remember stuff. And if I remember correctly, there were also like certain critics of the after the printing press that
were they?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's not pure. It's not too handwritten.
Oh.
And children nowadays are spending too much time reading. They should be running around outside.
Interesting.
So I think that's these kind of argumentations might come out of a place of acceptance of some form of snapshot in recent history, and building a potential superiority around that, which is fine, which is human. But I feel like we should kind of see it as that's just the way it is now. That's the new reality. And it might be scary, it might be not, it doesn't matter. That's just the way it is. Let's figure out how to economically participate in this, how to utilize it for one's own benefit and for societal benefit.
If you would give a masterclass on the topic, what is the first thing that would come to mind that you would like to make mandatory for young students to partake in a way?
I think what's already been done in China, and which we are to some degree lagging behind in Germany in particular, is computational thinking / programming classes, because this kind of systematic engineering thinking of systems, of step-by-step instructions makes you understand how those machines work. And once you understand how they work, they lose a lot of their scary qualities, of their uncertainties. For instance, a large language model, what does it actually do? It just takes the next most likely letter, for all intents and purposes, token, in a sequence and puts it next and puts it next. So it's just a search algorithm to simplify. So there is no thinking it doesn't consider information. It's just a statistical function. It's magical in what it can do when you're utilizing it. I don't want to take away from that.
What happens if we figured it out?
If we figured out what?
How to make these things conscious. One of the things that I'm working on right now is to figure out how to upload consciousness into something that we're able to have intergenerational advisory. And one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about is, well, what would it actually look like if that would work?
I mean, there is this thought experiment when you take a random person who doesn't speak Chinese, and set them behind a door. And under the door, somebody who actually is a native speaker slides a question underneath, and you have infinite time, and all the dictionaries, all the books to not learn Chinese, but use dictionaries to translate stuff. Would you be able to figure out how to write an answer and put that underneath the door? And the other person, would they be able to identify, is it a native speaker I'm talking to or not? And that's kind of the question. Like, would we be even able to differentiate? Is it conscious or not? I don't know if you know, but there was this experiment in the, I think, 80s, where they built a system called, I think ELIZA was the name of it, which was basically an experiment, one of the first systems in natural language processing, where you would say, I had a good day today. It would identify certain words and rephrase into a question and keep asking you questions, kind of like a therapist. I had a good day today. What made that day good? And people were actually confiding their secrets into this machine that didn't understand anything. It was just rule-based. And when they evaluated all the history, all the chat history for their scientific research, the lab assistants and everybody who was using it was outraged because they confided their deepest secrets to that machine, because it just asked the right question. That's also what you mentioned earlier with the young people using ChatGPT for all major life decisions. I think it's a fundamental tendency in that regard. It's not necessarily bad. It's only bad if we let it turn out bad.
I talked to a surgeon once, and he's I'm always depressed after I talk to that guy. He's so unromantic. And he said consciousness is just our brain perceiving itself. And do you think maybe like the idea that consciousness is this magical soul-like thing is maybe an attempt of human beings to think of us more special than we are? Or we just walk in language models?
I mean, there's this quote from the Matrix, right? What is reality if not electrical signals interpreted by your brain? And that's the case. I don't know if you also have that, but every once in a while, it's like my consciousness moves back in my head, and I see myself in the flesh suit where I'm in. Is that just like some trick? Is it reality? I don't know. I mean, you could also argue from a certain standpoint that everything, the entire world is just a projection of my mind. Because can I trust my senses? I don't know. So I would say I would side with the surgeon there. I wouldn't say we're particularly special, partially because I'm not religious by any means. And does this answer your question?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a straight answer to any of this, but I think it's interesting to learn how we see certain things. How do you think like an engineer? One of the things I'm interested about is if there would be nuclear war tomorrow, who would I like to have in my foxhole with me to not just survive, but maybe have a good time? And you are one of the people. I think you would just figure out how to make shit out of nothing. And it's partly, I think, because you have a very innovative mind on how to put things together and how to take them apart.
I think who you actually want to have is a mechanical engineer, but
Interesting. See, you already thought about this question, probably. Yeah.
I did actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a fun thought experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, not fun, but it is an interesting thought experiment. Let me rephrase.
Yeah, I had a shout out to you. I got a friend of mine tell me that I secretly hope for a crisis so that I can be useful in my natural habitat. You know, I think there's a part of men in particular where we crave mythical circumstances to prove ourselves and have a little bit of drama in this very sterile and unromantic world at times, in a way. Yeah, how do you think like an engineer though? What's your Socratic thought process? I had like in my last podcast, we interviewed a rocket scientist, and he shared a little bit about that. Like if a problem occurs in front of you, what is your process to work through that? Do you have an overarching process?
I mean, there's actually Farnham Street talked about that on their blog, the so-called ODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act. That's what they teach fighter
Can you say
pilots.
it again?
OODA, observe, orient, decide, act. That's what they teach fighter pilots. So you look around, you collect data, you orient, you put it into context, then you make a decision, and then you act on that decision, then you measure again. So it's kind of like this agile feedback loop in a sense.
Very interesting.
So in practical software engineering, there's the methodology of test-driven development. So you define a test, you make sure it breaks, and then you do everything in your power to make sure it doesn't break anymore. And then either yourself or your buddy writes new tests that fail, and eventually you slowly iterate towards where you actually want to be.
That's very interesting. It's like one of the things I, as a founder, struggled in the past was being quick enough and round enough with the iterational loops of my product. And I think sometimes like I was not able to survive with certain companies because I didn't have this process. What is it something you teach all your team members in order to solve the problems that are in front of them correctly? Or do you already hire people who know how to do that?
I hire people who know how to do that, but what everybody struggles with in this kind of setup is patience. Stuff always takes longer than you think and want it to take. So you just need to accept that fact and move as fast as you can, and you'll never feel like you'll actually move fast. You could compare yourself to others, you could compare yourself to yourself. You will eventually get faster, but it still takes time. If you think something takes 3 months, it's probably more like a year.
3 in my case. Was there a time in your life where you weren't patient?
For most of my life, I would assume. Because, being a male 18-year-old, I feel like everybody's impatient and everybody expects the world, and everybody expects just a lot and for everything to move quickly, and then you fall on your face once, twice, thrice, and eventually you figure out stuff takes longer. So, the first couple of business ideas we pursued didn't work out, and we always gravitated back to, is this agency, is this engineering service piece? And what I'd also say I struggled with, which I now accepted, is the fact that this is a very, very solid business. It's not necessarily exciting, but it's fun, it's scalable enough. You can work with cool people, you can work in interesting tech. And I guess everybody struggles with their own type of figuring out a meaning, but having an awesome team, being able to provide and nurture this team and do cool stuff with cool people and have happy customers, that personally to me gives a lot of meaning.
Once I heard a quote, I think it was from Amundsen, the guy who, or Hillary, I think it was Hillary, who climbed Mount Everest as one of the first persons, if I'm not butchering that quote. And he said something, when you plan for an expedition, by the time you're finished with strategy, it's almost not adventurous anymore. So I also like the
Good
idea.
quote.
I also like the idea that when you do stuff properly, you eliminate a lot of the risk and the unknown, and things become more mechanical than it may sound in an actual myth that you would read online or something like that.
So there's this quote from Alex Hormozi, which I like a lot, where he basically says, stick to the thing you know and where you know what sucks about it, and don't strive for the novelty where you don't understand the risks and the caveats.
Yeah.
So I know what sucks about running a software agency, running an AI consultancy. I don't know, for instance, what sucks about operating hotels, operating restaurants. It might look appealing and romantic in your head when you think about it as this kind of exit fantasy. But probably in actual reality, you would very quickly understand how it isn't as nice or as romanticized as you have it in your head looking through those pink glasses.
This podcast is sponsored by NeoVPN. You can go to neovpn.online to get the best VPN in the world. It's founded by a friend of mine who I respect deeply. He was a true revolutionary. A couple of years ago, humanity built a brain outside of the body. And certain governments do not allow my platforms, the new platform that I'm building, and even this podcast to be listened by guys like you. We don't think this is cool. We don't think that certain governments should have control over what kind of information we consume. So go to this website, neovpn.online, in order to make sure that these guys don't control what you're thinking.
Leadership. A word that I think a lot about lately. What does it mean to you?
I think it's actually about caring about the people you work with, that work with you, that follow you, and wanting them to succeed. Seeing them as humans, being able to accept their flaws, supporting them in overcoming their weaknesses and like thriving. You know, I always tell my team, you don't have to be here. I very, very much appreciate you being here and working with me, but if you want to leave, I'll be the first one trying to help you get interviews somewhere else, give you recommendations and everything, all the support needed. Because I feel like it's this, like with all relationships in a sense, it's about consciously opting in again. It's not about this blind following. It's about, okay, maybe it sucks, but I still want to be here. I still want to do this today. And this like opt-in kind of motivates.
Expectation setting and warning people in a loving way is something I wish I would have had when I started, because I didn't even know what the word leadership meant when I started becoming an entrepreneur, and nobody actually told me that. I still remember the first time like my co-founder wrote CEO of the website, and I was like, well, I didn't even know what these letters stood for, and it didn't come easy to me that people actually follow you. If you're the idea guy and you're the initiator, that the responsibility this comes along with. Because it's one thing to waste your life, your money, to try something. But if you're the person who says, over there is a treasure, and I'm going to make sure we're going to have a blast, and we're all going to get wealthy by doing it, and we're all going to survive. And you then don't follow through, and you end up wasting somebody's life. Like, this is something that has hurt me so much, and that gave me so many sleepless nights. And I feel like just having this expectation setting of like, I believe this, but...
Yeah. 100%.
So fucking important, I feel, in a way, because 100%. Then they can make their own decisions, and you can inform them about the risky part of the expedition. And usually, the real people will not leave at that point, but rather they will step up in a way.
Yep.
What is something I think you're blessed with very brilliant people around you. What is a lesson you learned from your co-founder? Because my co-founder has been a mentor to me in any sense of the word. Jesus Christ, have I learned a lot from him. What is a lesson that your partner taught you?
So when starting the NGO, I learned from the co-initiators, from the team, lessons about understanding enterprise organizations. So how a sociogram of an organization kind of influences how change needs to happen. So this whole change management topic. I learned about that pushing back in a negotiation is fine, that I'm allowed to do that. Basically, I got a permission, kind of like this mental block of needing permission. I learned a lot about leadership, in the sense that, like, people want structure, and you should give it to them when you can. But if you can't, you should openly communicate it. There's this great quote which I like. Is it's not a quote in that sense, but it's a kind of like a fable. If you were, like a comparison, if you were a publicly traded company, your entire team would know your financials. Every German company, you can look up their financials from like 2 years ago. It's not secret. You can look it up. So being transparent to your team about what's going on, deal sizes, they have good ideas. Like, even engineers, what means even engineers? Engineers have had great input on the way we're doing proposal structures.
The quote is a Freudian slip in my world. It's okay.
I do consider myself just an engineer, so that's fine.
For sure you do. Great recovery, my friend. Negotiation. I think that's something you and I often talk about in a way, where it's like,
we do.
What is something that has been working in regards to closing big deals while also preserving your own interests? Because I feel like when you are an up-and-coming company, there's always this danger of over-compromising, in a way. It's like the thing that comes to my mind is like this, when I'm a little bit needy in the romantic market, in a way, I might not be as stand on my own morals as much as after I got the funding, in a way, in this regard. How do you deal with these situations, and what is something you've learned about negotiation that you feel the next guy in line should know to have a head start?
So first of all, I wouldn't say over-compromising is necessarily a bad thing in the beginning. Because if you invest in people, invest in relationships, and build yourself a reputation, that can carry you quite far. So that's something I kind of stumbled in accidentally by over-compromising a lot in the first couple of years of the business. In terms of doing these kind of negotiations, obviously, right, there are those certain patterns, the way you should build a deal structure and whatnot, like all the little tricks and tips that you can collect by whatever, watching your videos, talking to you.
Yeah, but I agree. These tricks are.
But that's a part of it.
Yeah.
But if you see the people as a human being and understand what they actually want, and you actively, like, genuinely want to help them, you'll figure out something that works for everybody.
I had an interesting call with you once from my last company, Chieftain, when there was, I think there was a doctor in the call, a rocket scientist, and a ballet dancer, and we somehow talked about sales.
It kind of sounds like the beginning of a weird joke, right?
I wonder why this company didn't work. I am very confused. Talking about positioning, I should take my own advice. Anyway, but one of the things that I like is, like, we talked about dreams, and one of the things that you shared, that one of your visions was to have an intergenerational family office. And one of the things I always appreciate about you is the perspective of the long term. And I feel like one of the great ways to boost sales and is to rather see it as a relationship nurturing venture, in a way, where if you add enough value to a particular avatar for what they are needing, all these tactics of calibrated questions, objection handling, tonality, persuasion tricks, social engineering, you don't need them, because you have enough rapport with the person to actually have a conversation about what you have, and you can transfer what the solution entails, and they don't even want to not do a fair job in giving you what you want, because they are invested in the relationship also. How did you come across this long-term thinking?
I mean, the non-technical framing of what you just said would be, if your timeline is long enough and you're useful to people and people know what to come with towards you because you're the guy for XYZ, they will eventually either themselves want something or you want something. So if you look at it from a perspective of a limit in maths, if you approach towards infinity, everything explodes, right? I mean, not from a mathematical definition, but that doesn't matter right now. But if you take it to infinity, and if you just expand the timeline, somebody will eventually go towards you, and then it's a numbers game. If you're useful to enough people, you will be making a good living out of that.
You're making a rational case for the importance of virtue. And it's like one of the things that I hope with my new company, Alexandrian, is that one of the things I found in all psychopaths and antisocial people or narcissists is this: they had an incredible short frame of reality. They will consume somebody today with complete neglect that they maybe have to live in an environment now with somebody they really fucked over. And this is not a pleasant place to be constantly the person where people will not do business in the future with you. And it's like sometimes businesses fail, but there's even ways on correctly handling that. And one of the things that I hope is that when people treat themselves as if they would have to live forever, all this small-minded dog kind of mentality dies out. How did you stumble across this outside of your economic frame? Did somebody teach you the importance of thinking over a longer time horizon and being a good person? Or is this your rationalization why you're a good guy?
That's I'm a good guy without rationalization.
I feel whenever somebody makes you a compliment, you're giving a rational case to deflect some of the cringe that ensues from it.
Thank you. I would say that
comes. No, I'm joking.
I would say that partially comes from my dad and the framing he gave me pretty early on. That in the United States, you think of like months or years in terms of business, and you have like this very fast-paced environment, whereas the traditional German family business thinks in generations. Yeah. And this intergenerational thinking is something like, if you use that as a framing, that you don't want to build something to get rich quick in 12 months, but to build something that can feed generations, then you're way more mindful about your reputation. You're way more mindful about the impact you have on people. Because a mentor of mine recently gave me the quote: "You always meet twice in IT." And there's some merit to that, because you maybe work together on project A, and then years later you work together on project B. And if you've done a good job, if you've been a decent person, then that will be remembered, and you will be the person they call for project C, because they like working with you. And I mean, people like to, that's something they say in sales, right? People like to buy from people they like.
Yeah, for sure. And it's even for me, I'm having a shift for the motto of my family, my company is ad mortem et ultras, to death and beyond. And it's like, ever since I'm started to work on this archive with you, which is preserve ideally like the stories and the character and the consciousness of an individual. Yeah. I'm more mindful of not painting and tilting and my dirty soul. I don't want to do certain things where if somebody from the next generation is going to consult me and say, why did you do that? And I'm like, oh, why did we do that? And I feel like thinking along the time horizons is a great way to acquire a lot of virtues. I think all bad habits have in common is that there's an immature perception of time. Yep. I want to feel good right now. I want to escape unsatisfying emotions right now, and I don't look at the future in a way. Neither my own self or others.
Do you know that story of the Korean king who fell off the horse?
Tell me about it, please.
So there was this. I think it's Korea. It's like one ancient Southeast Asian civilization. I'm pretty sure it's Korea, and they had those royal scribes. They were not allowed to take directions from anybody, and were supposed to just objectively record history for future generations. And this king fell off a horse, and the scribe wrote it down on his notes, and he didn't want people to know that he fell off the horse. So he had the scribe basically destroy the records. Then in secrecy he wrote it down again, and out of fear for being remembered, for falling off for people to know that he fell off the horse once, he's now known as this one king who didn't want people to know that he fell off a horse, and that's like thousands of years later.
It's you can measure. I think Nietzsche once said this: you can measure a man by the degree to which they can tolerate the truth. In a way, and it's like one of the things I found with evil people, or evil is a strange word, is that they are always the enemies of memory. They are though altering the memories of others and only want them to have this glamorous idea, this projection that they have in their mind and live in this fantasy, or even they start to change history itself in a way. And I found that very interesting. That's like personal patterns of narcissism also can affect companies and countries even on how they behave. Standard operating procedure that saved your ass.
I mean, there's a blood/stupidity tax on every single standard operating procedure I'm doing, because I did it wrong at least once, right? The way we're doing project management, we didn't do that and fucked up. The way we're doing due diligence with new people we're working with, made mistakes, fucked up, and it kind of goes through. So I could list quite a lot of things that saved me moving forward, but not in retrospective.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I quote of mine, quoting myself on a podcast. Speaking of narcissism, is that advisory is to discover where you die and don't go there again, in a way. And it's like one of the things that I wish somebody would have told me, is that wisdom and experience is actually you having post-traumatic stress disorder in a useful way. Where it's like you have the fucking shadows of, you remember when you did that, this happened. No way. And it's like I never get what experience was about, what these old people were telling, but now I get it. It's like you don't just have that when you're starting out. So you're having like a whole memory bank of awful experiences that were connected to certain choices. If you can implant a belief system into the people you would like to work with, what do you hope that if you would cook up the perfect partner for yourself? It can be a co-founder, it can be a business partner, or even a friend. Like, what would be one belief system or mindset that you would give that person?
I personally have a hard time dealing with people that. Let me actually flip that around and tell you what would make it difficult for me to work with somebody. It's a mindset that is very self-limiting, and especially in the way, like, I can't deal with people that have problems and complain about those problems, and if you talk to them 24 months later, they still have the same problems and complain about the same problems and haven't even tried to change anything about it. I respect people being stuck, and I want to help people being stuck out of like goodness of my heart, intrinsic motivation, because I like to feel good, however you want to frame it. But what I find hard to comprehend with my own belief system is people that could change stuff, would have opportunities, but don't take them.
It's very interesting. One of my quotes that I like is from Maslow. It's like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I had this co-student. I don't know how you say this. She was this incredibly obese woman. I don't think I've ever met somebody who was more in the gym than this lady. But she didn't know how to count calories. And it was so interesting how this woman worked incredibly hard. She went run. I hate running. Even I'm a former athlete, but like, maybe running, I would not do it. And she was working so very hard, but she misjudged the constraint of her current goal and kept working on the wrong thing. And I think sometimes people just don't have a good standard a procedure that helps them by the end of the week of measuring if they are focusing on using the correct tool to get ahead. In a way, how do you, I think you're a great executive, how do you make sure that you consistently identify the current obstacle? Because we talked yesterday night also about that you've graduated for yourself from certain constraints in marketing and sales,
Yes.
for instance, in the years. How do you not just focus on stuff that wasn't working? What's your process for diagnosing a business in regards to what's broken here? Because you also do advisory for other companies and consultancy.
I mean, step one for me was to understand the model of a business. And I mean, what is a business? It is a transformative entity that takes in something, changes it, and puts it out, and ideally it generates more value than was taken in. So if you look at this, for instance, you take in a lead, you capture a lead with an Instagram form, you transform it into a paying customer, you solve a problem, and at the end you have a person that has a problem solved. You have generated value. Part of this enterprise value created went into your own machine back and can be reinvested into sales. So you have a machine where you throw €1 in and you get €15 or whatever out. So that's fundamentally, and within that you have certain processes, like a hiring process, a support process, a onboarding process, all of those processes that end up creating a process map. And within this process map, there will always be things that are currently breaking the machine. So the way I look at it is, if I fix one problem, what's the next thing that breaks? Because that's what I need to focus my attention on. So I'm constantly asking myself, where is the constraint? I'm also asking my team, where is the constraint? What is currently breaking? So for instance, first we had an issue where marketing and sales wasn't going good enough. So we focused on that. Then our project management broke because we were taking on more projects at the same time, having bigger teams, etc. And now after that is fixed, the issue is recruiting, because we can't hire fast enough to staff the projects that that go in and that we actively can manage. But if there's not enough headcount, then we can't get stuff done.
It's a great book on this is because you're thinking like an industrialist, a manufacturer almost in a way. There's a great book from there's a constraint theory. I think it's by Goldratt or something. It's one of the books that heavily influenced I think Elon while he built Tesla, which is like a car company, right? So it's like they literally have a manufacturing line, and he said that at some point he studied the old industrialists to a degree where he was more worldly experts in manufacturing. And I feel one of the things I heard about his leadership style, even though like he's quite the divisive person in regards to what people think of him.
Yeah.
But what I heard is that he has weekly meetings with his executives where he macro analyzes the constraint and micromanages the solutions, and then doesn't really solve the same challenge twice. It's a constant stage of graduation from one point of view. It was side story in regards to this.
In computer science, there's actually also a discipline, or like the intersection between management and computer science. This is a discipline called operations research or management research, depending on who you ask, and it's the algorithmic evaluation of constraint optimization. So for instance, you have a certain roster. So the default textbook problem, for instance, is a medical clinic. You're running an ER. You have a certain amount of nurses. When do you schedule which nurse so they have enough time to rest? These kind of problems. And you can mathematically describe them, and you can mathematically figure out potential solutions.
Let's come to the last part of the interview. I'm so happy that even though you are in the midst of running your company, that I could visit you here in the Hassel Villa and get some insights on what's going on behind those beautiful eyes of yours. So, future predictions. It's like I'm interviewing visionaries who sometimes have very interesting epiphanies. What are 3 predictions you have for the next decade?
Predictions for the next decade. So first of all, I wouldn't call myself a visionary, because I'm more concerned with the right here and right now and the next couple of months and maybe years and not decades. So, but if you're asking me, there is a certain transformative quality to AI, and to the fact that it blends the agent using a tool with the tool itself, because AI, the tool, is becoming the operator to some degree, and this autonomy is only increasing. There will be some plateaus. There will be, first of all, a certain, I personally expect this current AI hype bubble to die within the next 3 to 5 years. And only then will it gain mainstream adoption and a certain, like Gartner hype cycle titles it, the plateau of productivity.
Got it. The last part of the interview I call the Ezekiel questionnaire. It's aligned with I like dramatic names.
You do.
I do dramatic names, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's cool, and
It is cool.
and
It is
cool, and you can unsubscribe if you don't think so. So the last part is a bit about the timeless nature of what I'm currently doing with the new platform, Alexandrian, and also with this podcast. So what are 3 books that have shaped you the most? So I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. You don't have to go too much into depth since we're running out of time. And
rapid fire, I get it.
Yeah, but still deep. What are 3 books that have shaped you the most?
Principles by Ray Dalio. A lot of the publications of Naval Ravikant, like his tweet storms and resulting podcast. Social Engineering by Dale Carnegie.
Interesting. I wonder what these 3 books reveal about your.
So, Principles by Ray Dalio gave me a lot of insights on how business works, how businesses work, on those inner workings. And what I liked a lot about it is that it's his way of thinking, which is very algorithmic in the sense that certain situations can be solved in certain ways. It's kind of like a recipe book, and that really lends itself to where I think Naval Ravikant with his publications helped me understand. Basically, it hyped me up to actually pursue business, and helped me with overcoming this a lot of the early onset of self-doubt. Not saying I'm completely over that, because I think like nobody in business enduring hardships will be completely over self-doubt, but it happened with a lot of that. And Social Engineering by Dale Carnegie helped me understand a lot. Like, it was basically the first book about psychology I read, and it helped me understand how to form meaningful relationships.
If you could resurrect 3 historical leaders or figures to your board of advisors, who would you pick?
That's a very, very good question, and I guess
fictional characters even.
Oh, fictional characters. Then we definitely have Morpheus from the Matrix. I'm torn between Gandalf and Master Yoda when we stay on fictional characters, and for non-fictional characters, I would definitely include Dale Carnegie. I mean, probably not one of the nicest people, but he was good at what he was doing. And I do respect that to some degree. And it obviously depends on the aspect of life we are looking at. But I think for the most part, yeah, Master Yoda, Morpheus, and Dale Carnegie.
For future generations, if this podcast were the only piece of your journey to survive the test of time, what message would you leave?
That building meaningful relationships with people can endure all changes in technology, and that is something universal. And if you solve big problems for people doing great stuff, that basically just by picking up the crumbs, you'll be all right.
If you could correspond with your ancestors, what would you tell them about your journey, and what do you hope they would say in return?
I mean, I would say that, basically all I can say to them is congratulations. Whatever you did worked. We are still here. I mean, the amount of hardship faced over history, I'm not sure what time horizon we were thinking, but if we even say something little less like 300 years or something, it's not that many generations actually. My last name was around that time, which I find fascinating in like this grander scheme of things. And I was, yeah, I mean, they wouldn't understand the challenges I'm facing because their reality would be so different from ours today. But I think the fact that we are still that's what I mentioned earlier with those with this book collection, with the news reports from like the 60s onwards. What I find so amazing about that it's real people doing their best given the knowledge they have and the abilities they have. And so I think what I wouldn't need to say much, just me being able to communicate with them in the first place would probably give them a lot of hope.
Speaking of hope, if we would, 2 questions and we're done. Would empower your grave with an avatar of your speaking, what would the final sentence be, or just the epitaph or something like this? Anyway, like a motto can be also. Like, what would you be as the prompt if I'm meeting your grave and you appear as a ghost, like a hollow crown from death? What do you say? Outside of go away, Daniel.
My first intention would be, you probably know this YouTube video of the guy who put a recording with a Bluetooth speaker in his graveside saying, let me out of here. Guys, I'm dead. Enjoy the party, which I found very, very endearing in the sense that he made fun of this dire situation. But taking it to a more serious direction, I know that I don't have to pick just one thing, because with the way technology enhances, including your platform, my entire consciousness will be available. So people can pick my brain.
Where can people find you online? And one of the important questions that I like to ask too is, how can people help you? Many of the people I meet are very selfless in their nature, something I am not. And it is, where can people find you online? And in regards to your venture and vision, what are some favors of people we can send your way to amplify your personal path of purpose?
So first of all, you can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/ferdinand.biere. And you can find our company on www.deepmetis.com. It still feels weird to say out the domain in the form of media. In terms of how I can be helped, if you feel like I'm doing something in a way where I could do it better, I'd love feedback. Always feedback is highly appreciated. In terms of giving me the ability to teach, right? To explain concepts to people, because only by teaching you really master a subject, I believe. Especially in terms of something so vast and deep as technology. And lastly, I believe my biggest asset is in descending order, my reputation and my network. So I always like meeting new people, figuring out if I can help them, they can help me, if we can do something together. And like I said, you always meet twice. So even if it doesn't matter if it's in a professional setting or a private setting.
In that sense, Father used to say, an ally is an ark you can take cover in when the rain is coming, and the rain is always coming.
I love that quote.
That I learned. And so, allies, friends, challenges, opportunities to teach, send them your way. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm looking forward to do great things with you in the future and learn a lot more from you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.